Hey friends, it's your daddy Judson. I am currently traveling out of the country, and Brian and I are bringing you a banked episode that we recorded last May. We decided to keep the original intro because the stories are kind of fun and interesting. Quick note before we get that episode started. Our party is happening this Friday, March 28th, Dads and Daddies Pod and Party for dads, daddies, and every kind of son. The live podcast recording starts at 7 p.m., no late entrance after 7:15 to the taping. 9 p.m., the party begins. Clothes check opens, and the party dress code is underwear or less. Tickets to the party are $20 in advance, $30 at the door. If you come for the podcast, you get into the party for free. The party will be at the Cockpit at the Red Eye, New York, 355 West 41st Street, and we'll be joined by DJ Ben Schultz and co-hosts Sky Miles and Joshua Betts. Hope to see you at the party and enjoy the episode.
Hi, friends. Welcome to Dads and Daddies, a podcast about the lives and times of adult gay men in the here and now. I'm Brian Ruben Sowers, the dad.
And I am Judson Morrow, the daddy. Brian.
Hi, Judson.
Welcome back from across the pond.
Thank you. How are you?
So great to see you. I am having just a really lovely week.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
And you are just back from Austin, Texas?
I am. I'm not going to embarrass either one of us with accents from either of those places. Fresh
Thank you,
drink,
because
governor.
you just said. There's few things that get under my skin more than people telling a story about when they've been somewhere where people speak in accents and they have to also do the accent. It's not necessary.
It's racist. It's what it is.
And there's that. Tell me about your weekend away.
Oh, it was so delightful. I had talked to Bruce a couple months ago about wanting to take a sober trip, or not, wow, Freudian. It was very sober, which was great, but I meant solo trip, Judd's individual adventures. I had actually heard about Austin Naked Yoga Camp through a Grindr hookup.
Yes.
And when I investigated it online, I was like, oh yeah, this looks like something I would absolutely love. And it far exceeded my expectations. I think sometimes when you hear yoga retreat, you think like, oh, it's a little bougie, especially depending on the location. But this was at a Jewish summer camp.
Okay.
In between, outside of Wimberley, which is in between San Antonio and Austin.
It just happened to be a Jewish summer camp. This retreat was not a Jewish.
They're two totally distinct things. It was gay naked yoga. Or at least like, it's actually just gay yoga, but I think the population that appeals to is like gay friendly, or at least in some way interested in being around other naked men.
Yes.
Which doesn't necessarily make you gay per se. But
so how naked was it?
This is how naked it was. The only time you were required to wear clothing was in the dining hall.
Okay.
And even that was super lax, like shorts, a sarong, a bathing suit. You didn't even need to wear like a t-shirt or even shoes.
Okay.
Just something on the bottom.
Okay.
But the rest of the time, walking around the camp, hanging by the pool, any of the yoga classes, all naked. And it was 100 degrees. So it was very, very fit.
So you were that naked?
I was probably like half and half.
Yeah.
I'm not like embarrassed of my body. Sometimes I'm just like more comfortable in shorts.
Right.
So I would always, if I was like running around the camp, I was probably in shorts,
right.
But any of the classes, I did naked.
And there's something else that you did naked.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I'm so delighted to tell you there was a talent show.
Yes.
And I did a tight 6 stand-up set naked.
That's amazing.
And
I so wish I could have been there.
Thank you. Well, actually, Dads and Daddies promo. I wasn't completely naked. I wanted to use the set as a promo for the show. So I did wear a Dads and Daddies tank top on top, but no bottoms. Okay. So I had shoes, the Dads and Daddies tank, and then my dick out. And it's funny because I didn't realize until after the fact. I was like, oh my God, I didn't even think about being naked. I was just trying to make sure like I stuck to the set that I had written. It was a wonderfully warm audience. Like they laughed uproariously, if I may, at every single joke. Like so many compliments around camp afterward. It was just really, really great to be seen as this funny and brave person. It was awesome.
I love that.
It was great. It was also kind of weird too, because normally when you do a set, you can fucking go. Like if you bomb, you leave the club and never have to see anyone again. And this was at like 7 p.m. on Saturday, and we didn't leave until noon on Sunday. So I just thought, this better be fucking good, because I'm going to have to see all these people for another half day. It was great.
I'm so happy.
There was like yoga, a pool. We didn't have to cook because there was a dining hall. One of the things that I really enjoyed is I did a session that was connecting with your spirit animal.
Okay.
So now I know what my spirit animal is. I'm going to keep that private.
Okay.
Only because I feel like that's a cool thing to guard.
Okay.
But I will share. I will share with you the gift my spirit animal brought me.
Okay.
And it was a marshmallow. And I thought, okay, maybe that's because I'm at a camp, but also I just interpret it as like, go softly. It's okay when things get sticky. And then I just started asking other hot guys if their spirit animal maybe brought them like chocolate or graham crackers.
And
it worked.
That's amazing.
They're like, I don't know what
spirit animal s'mores.
Yeah. They're like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, but like, let's kiss.
I love that.
So the last thing I wanted to share is like there was space to like be sexual, which was really great. The thing that was nice about spending so much time naked is it sort of desexualizes it.
Sure.
Like when the spring gets warm, the summer gets here, you see a guy running with his shirt off in the city. I just can feel myself being so gross toward him. Just like my mouth is watering, my dick is getting hard. And just spending 4 days with dudes naked, it could just kind of strips all of that.
Right.
But in the moments that you do want to pursue that, there was like time and space.
Nice.
Which was great. Not a priority, but I'm glad that was like part of it too.
Sounds perfect.
Yeah, it was awesome. How was London town?
London was so nice. My husband and I went to London, just the two of us, no kids, to celebrate our 10th wedding anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm really proud of you. That's significant.
Thank you. Yeah, and we hadn't been to London in 7 years, which I actually hadn't realized until I was on the plane there and did the math. And not until we landed and started walking around did I remember how deeply I love it there and how much I really have been missing it without even acknowledging that. So in the first 5.5 years of our relationship, we went there together 4 times. And
that's a lot.
Yeah. But then we had a second kid, and then there was a pandemic, and we just haven't been in a while. So it was just so nice to be back. I'm so happy there. It reminded me of the way I felt when I first moved to New York and realized, oh, this is where I'm meant to be. It was just, it's so funny. You and I texted while I was there, and I told you how like calm and happy I am there. And you pointed out that that's funny considering it's a bustling city, not unlike New York. But I feel like it's those kinds of environments where like I can relax, my shoulders go down. I'm just happy. I love to be amongst a crowd. And it's when it's when I feel isolated in like a countryside that I feel more anxious, actually. I love the feeling of connection. And, the last trip when my husband and I were there 7 years ago, he described London as being extra levels of New York. Like when you make it to the end of a Super Mario game and you get to the like crazier, more fun levels. Because it is very relatable to New York City. If you know how to navigate New York, you can navigate London, but all just kind of through the looking glass. Like it's all just a little bit different. But they also have an incredible theater scene. We saw 4 shows, which were all very different from each other, but all excellent. I really can't pick a favorite. We saw an immersive production of Guys and Dolls, where you kind of stand on the stage and it happens around you. We saw a musical called Operation Mincemeat, which won the Olivier there this past year, which is their Tony Awards for Best New Musical. And it's 5 actors portraying a number of characters. And it's the story of this scheme that the Brits pulled off during World War II to fool Hitler at this crucial moment, which sounds very serious, but it's a laugh out loud comedy. And the talent on that stage is incredible. The music is incredible. And I couldn't believe how well each of the songs really furthered the story. So I'm hoping and praying for everybody that it comes to New York. We saw the stage production of Spirited Away, the Miyazaki Studio Ghibli movie.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Which was the reason I made this trip, because I love that movie. I've loved that movie since it came out 20-something years ago. And this is a stage version of it. And do you know the movie?
I've seen it, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't I can't talk about it the way people who really love it can talk about it, but I've seen it and enjoyed it.
Yes. So there's a character in the movie, like the kind of the old witch. Her name is Yubaba, and the woman who voiced that in the movie is the actress playing it on stage in London right now, which is super cool. It's all Japanese. The whole production's Japanese with English super titles. Anyway, that was very cool. And then we saw ABBA Voyage, which is the virtual ABBA concert. It's all like, I don't think holographs or holograms is the right terminology or the accurate terminology, but like, I don't know how they do it. It's all light, smoke, mirrors, etc. But like, it feels like there are 4 flesh and blood people on that stage in front of you, like in their prime, doing a 90-minute ABBA concert. I mean, it is crazy.
And it's not just like on a screen.
No.
Like they're
I don't know
in a
how they do it.
3-dimensional space.
And we were like pretty close to the stage. So you would think we'd be able to see the trickery, but you could not. It is an incredible experience, incredible technology. So those were our 4 show experiences. We went all over to all of our favorite neighborhoods, and then of course, there was the other aspect, the gay and the sex aspect of our trip.
The boys.
We kicked off our anniversary trip with lovely sex just between the 2 of us, which was a beautiful hookup. And I was very happy actually that that's how the trip started, because it was our anniversary trip. We did end up inviting somebody over to the hotel room for what was also a lovely hookup, and it was funny. His profile was titled something like "Certified Werewolf" because he was a very hairy person. And his pictures were like, made him look a little on the rougher side. And I was like a tad nervous, but I was doing this with my husband. And also this guy was like super fast in terms of like, all of a sudden we were just in the beginning of the conversation. He knew what hotel we were at. He said, "Okay, I'm on my way." I was like, "Oh, okay." And like, we weren't necessarily ready, but he was on his way. And so I was a little nervous. And then he showed up and was just the loveliest English gentleman.
I was actually going to ask, like, if the London boys are as like flaky and non-committal as New Yorkers, or if you just had like traveler's luck. Like,
I don't know. I will
balance?
say that the apps did not feel as active as they did when we were in Las Vegas, when we were in Puerto Vallarta. Like, the energy was not there. However, this one boy who was like super hot in his pictures and in person too, but like the funny thing was just the discrepancy between like this like hairy, rough werewolf character and then this lovely English gentleman who walks in the door. Was pretty funny, but it was a lovely hookup. It was truly a perfect trip. And then the next night we went to the Royal Vauxhall. Somebody's gonna have to tell me how to pronounce it. Tavern, which I guess is certainly the oldest gay establishment, I think, in London, and if not in more of the world, because it's been apparently consistently gay since like the 19th century, if I'm got my facts right. And it was pointed out to us that this was the gay bar in Baby Reindeer where he first went to meet, oh God, what was her name, who he was seeing in that? But when he meets his person he's dating out at a gay bar, it was this tavern. And it was
yes.
And it was incredible. There was a drag queen who we walked in partway through her show, and she still stayed on the stage for another hour. And it was just joyous, and I really love London. Everything that is hard here, everybody there is just like a little bit nicer about, more polite about, whether they are truly feeling that way or not. That's at least what they're putting out. Everything's a little bit cleaner. Listen, not to disparage New York. I'm only happy, for real in New York, but we had a really perfect time.
I do want to touch on very quickly, since we're talking about London and drag.
Yes.
Last night,
Yeah.
my husband and I watched the movie available on Amazon Prime, Femme. Have you heard of it?
No.
Oh my God.
Okay.
All of this is revealed in the first 5 minutes, so let me just set it up for you.
Okay.
A drag queen gets attacked by a man and then sort of infiltrates his life. Chaos ensues. It's so good.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's unbelievably complex. The emotions that you will feel during this movie are crazy.
Wow.
Highly recommended.
Okay.
So while you were in London, I was watching movies about London. Cool.
I love that. Okay. Putting that on the list. Shall we take a break?
Let's do it. Welcome back, listeners. So one of the things that I really enjoyed about this previous weekend is that I had the opportunity to meet a lot of daddies, yes, of course, but also a lot of dads, many gay men with children. And what I realized is that while we have talked definitely about your being a dad, we've never talked about your journey to fatherhood. And I would like to learn more about that if we could.
Sure, of course.
Amazing. So we'll just do a little interview style.
Okay.
I'm going to go way back.
Yeah.
To like teenage college Brian.
Yes.
As you're coming out.
Yes.
Or even before you came out.
Yes.
Did you grow up thinking of yourself as a future father?
Yes.
Like, I'm going to be a dad one day.
Yes.
How early?
As far back as I can remember.
Wow. Okay.
I grew up very close with my mother and, idolized her. And I think that I wanted to some level, emulate her life. And my mother, my sister, and I were very close. As I've mentioned, when we've talked about my relationship with my father growing up, with whom I have a very wonderful relationship now. I didn't then. My mother, sister, and I existed as this unit outside of him. And so the relationship to my mom, the relationship to my sister were always just the two most important relationships in my life. And I think I just always wanted to recreate that and there was never a doubt in my mind that I wanted to be a parent, which I think is one of the elements that made me struggle so much with being gay, because at the time, the two did not seem to be in sync.
That was actually the next question. Like, as you were coming out, did you feel like that was in direct conflict with this dream of parenthood?
I mean, I don't remember specifically. And I know that by the time I was ready to articulate that I was gay, the part of what I said to my parents when I came out is, this doesn't change anything. I can still have kids. But I mean, that was many years later. I have to believe that, yes, it was a conflict in my mind. And that, I know that I, for years, would tell myself that the feelings that I were feeling were a phase that I would grow out of, that I was still going to get married to a woman and have kids. Like, as a younger person, that was definitely my thinking. I would convince myself that the only reason I was having gay feelings is because none of the girls in school wanted to date me. And so it was just kind of a natural response.
Because you're gay. Duh. They know it.
You're right.
Interesting, because sometimes I wonder if I've never wanted to be a parent.
Yeah.
I'm not a parent. But sometimes I wonder if that seed was planted very early, because I knew so early on I was a queer person.
Right.
So it just kind of removed it. It's hard for me to say which came first, right? Like my identifying my queerness, or
Totally.
like the negation of parenthood just as the project.
Yeah.
So you come out and, we're not always in the mindset of like, oh, I'm looking for a long-term partner. Like part of the fun of being gay when we're young is being gay when we're young, right? And just being
Right.
out in the world fucking around. Did you think to yourself as you started to evolve and mature into a person that wanted a long-term relationship, I'm definitely going to be with a person who also wants to be a dad?
Yes. So let me dissect that question a little bit. So I think I consider myself a romantic, and I think from the second I came out, everybody that I looked at, was attracted to, was somebody that I wanted to marry and have kids with.
Okay.
And it wasn't until
You're one of those.
I am one of those. And it wasn't until I was 25 and my friends, Kevin and Kirk, kind of taught me how to be a gay 25-year-old of the late 90s, how to dress in a more attractive, sexier way, how to navigate the bars, all of that, that I kind of shifted. And that was when, it wasn't until I was 25 that I made it to the part that you're talking about in terms of just like wanting to like have fun. Like I consider my gay youth being from like 25 to, 30, 35, I don't know, 40. But up until then, all the people that I dated are people that I was hoping would end up being a husband that I would raise kids with.
You very fortunately, and I love how frequently you address this, you met someone who is the love of your life and you are parents together. Was there ever a moment before meeting Toby where maybe your boyfriend at the time's not wanting to be a parent was the deal breaker?
So my last long-term boyfriend before Toby, who, by the way, that ended several years before I met Toby, had zero interest in kids. And he came out of that period in my life where I was out at the East Village bars quite literally 5 out of 7 nights a week, sleeping around so much that I eventually took a 6-month break because I had tried to bring somebody home from the Phoenix, a bar in the East Village, and he described my bedroom back to me, and I had no recollection of having slept with him before. So I thought, okay, I need to take a break. And then as that period was coming to a close was when I met my boyfriend, who we were together for a couple of years, and which at the time was the longest I'd been with somebody. And he had zero interest in having kids. And this was somebody, and I think I've maybe mentioned this before, that like when we eventually broke up, it was the kind of breakup where everybody in my life said, thank God we hated him. And he was this person who was pretty much negative about everything, but because he was positive on me, that made me feel very special.
Yes.
And as soon as it wasn't that him not wanting to have kids was a deal breaker, but as soon as we broke up, I kind of realized that I had been lying to myself that whole time about being okay with that, and knew that moving forward, it would be a deal breaker for me.
Yeah. The lies we tell ourselves in relationships that don't fit us.
Yes.
So you meet Toby.
Yes.
The meet cute.
Yes.
And you start dating. And then how quickly do you start talking about, well, that's a lot of questions in one, because it's like, how quickly does it start to get deep enough to see a long-term partnership? But like, how quickly do you start talking about like becoming parents together?
I don't. So there's two parts to that, right? Like kind of like you just said, I think pretty early on, within the first literally few dates, I think I probably put my feelers out to ensure that this was somebody who was open to the idea. And Toby has always said that he's the kind of person who could have gone either way. It really depended on the person he ended up with. And once he ended up with me, it was clearly the way he was going to go. When I met Toby, his sister was pregnant with her first child. He was born about 6 weeks into us dating. And so having kids was very much a topic of conversation, just whether it was us having kids, like this was the first time, it's in his family, it's just Toby and his sister. This was the first kid of that generation. So there's just a lot of talk about that. And when his sister came to visit with the baby for the first time, the baby was 2 months old, and we spent a few days together. It was my first time meeting his sister. And apparently on the drive back to Ohio, she kept referring to me as Uncle Brian, and we had only been dating for 6 weeks, and this baby was brand new. So there was already just a lot of like talk about family and us being a family. And so I think it kind of very naturally or organically evolved. I think it was very clear to Toby because as you know, I am clear about the things that I want, that I was somebody who wanted to have kids, and we were and are, but were like very kind of madly in love very quickly. And so it was I just think it kind of became natural. It wasn't a moment of like, we need to sit down and talk about this.
Right.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the go ask your dad question we had in a previous episode about, I'm single, gay, want kids. How quickly do I bring it up in the relationship?
Yeah.
And it sounds like it happened fairly organically.
Yeah.
In distinction to you, I knew that I didn't want to have kids.
Right.
Nor was I actually looking for a long-term partnership when I met Bruce.
Right.
But one of the things that helped accelerate my interest was knowing pretty early on that he had wanted kids in a previous lifetime, quote unquote.
Right.
But had seen himself as having aged out of the project.
Okay.
So I was like, great. You maybe wanted kids, but now you're too old for it.
Right.
I don't want kids.
Let me be your kid.
That's amazing. Yeah. Ooh, that is so loaded. So you and Toby are together,
Yes.
and you decide to have kids.
Yes.
We know that 2 men biologically cannot reproduce.
Right.
So how did the stork know where your apartment was?
So you wish upon a star.
Yeah.
We had heard about an annual conference in New York called Men Having Babies, which they have conferences all over the world. But their New York conference happens every fall. And so Toby and I got engaged only 7 months into our relationship, but then decided, and by decided, I mean Toby decided that we would then remain engaged for about another year and a half before we got married. But in the engagement, we heard about Men Having Babies, and we attended just to learn all the things. And it turns out that Men Having Babies is specifically a conference about surrogacy. And Toby and I met actually with friends of his who had adopted.
Gay friends
of his who had adopted. Just to hear about their experiences. And I pretty much knew that I wanted to pursue surrogacy. I was willing to look into adoption because Toby felt that if he was ever going to be a parent, it was going to be through adoption. There's so many kids in need. But for 2 reasons. First and foremost, I'm way too much of a control freak for all of the variables that are in the adoption process. Personally, that is just me. And for me, that outweighed some of the pros of the adoption process. And then, going back to what we've talked about in terms of like all this feelings of needing to compensate for being gay and apologize for being gay. I felt that I owed it to my father, or that I at least wanted to give my father a genetic grandchild. So it was important to me that the kids were of my genetics, which the only way you're going to get that is through surrogacy. So we went to Men Having Babies, and the day started with a session that was called Surrogacy 101, specifically designed for people who had never attended one of their conferences before. And in that 1 hour, I learned more than what I thought I was going to learn over the course of the entire day. There's so much that goes into surrogacy. Turns out there's maybe just as much that's out of your control in surrogacy as adoption, turns out. But we learned a lot and spent the day there. And the way the day was structured, at least back then, was that first there was a set of panels, or a panel, I should say, where there was a representative from each kind of agency that one works with. So there's a surrogacy agency who helps pair you with a surrogate. There's an egg donor agency who helps pair you with an egg donor. There is a fertility clinic who works their magic on both the surrogate and the egg donor. And then there is a lawyer who makes it all legal. And so we learned about all those people. Then there was a break where all the various vendors, because at this event, there's also a fair where all these different surrogacy agencies, egg donor agencies, attorneys, and fertility clinics are there to try to, drum up business. They each made a quick introduction on a mic, and then you had a lunch break where you could go and visit all their tables. And then after that was a panel where it was surrogates and the fathers they had worked with. And so we learned a tremendous amount, heard from all kinds of people, and spent the lunch hour talking to some of the vendors. And we met this one lawyer who happened to be based in the town where I grew up, where my parents were, where my mom, at least at that point, still was. And we really liked her. And so we kept in touch with her. And then when we were ready to start the process in earnest, just after our wedding, we contacted her again. And typically the lawyer is probably the last person somebody contacts because you don't need them until after all the other parts are in place. But we really liked her. And I wanted to do the surrogacy where I grew up because I wanted my mom to be able to be at appointments and be involved because this was going to be the first grandkid. And so I wanted to give that to her. So, and also at the time, surrogacy wasn't legal in New York, so we needed to do it elsewhere anyway.
What year is this?
This would have been 2014.
Surrogacy wasn't legal in New York in 2014?
Correct.
Crazy. I also, having worked in like business to business sales for so long, I think it is wild that you met your surrogate at a trade show.
Well,
yes, it was a conference, but like also.
No, it was essentially a trade show. So we needed to do it elsewhere anyway. A lot of people at the time were doing it in Connecticut, in Boston, but it served us to do it where my mom was based. And so we met this lawyer. We really liked this lawyer. And then we contacted her, and she made recommendations to us for the fertility clinic, for the surrogacy agency, and for the egg donor agency.
So you have expressed this desire that you wanted to have kids, I'm going to say it this way, as biologically as possible, meaning
yes.
They were genetically related to you.
Yes.
How are your kids related to you?
So our older one has my husband's genetics. Our younger one has my genetics, and they both share the maternal genetics of the egg donor.
Oh, okay, so let's just talk about your first, for example. Did you find out that she shared the genetics with Toby after the fact? Like they put you both in a little bowl and then see what happens?
So we knew we had a very successful egg retrieval. We had a ton of eggs. We had a ton of successful embryos. And then and we knew the entire time, like, which were made with my sperm, which were made with his sperm. And then you get those, you submit those for genetic testing so that you are implanting the embryos with the highest probability of getting pregnant. And we knew that we were transferring, like whose we were transferring. But with our older one, we transferred 2 embryos. We transferred one of his and one of mine. And we transferred and they even go so far as to like rate them like on a number scale. I forget if it was 1 to 4 or 1 to 5, but like this one's a 4.0, this one's a 3.5, this one, And so I wanted to give my dad, if possible, a grandson for old-fashioned reasons, passing along a name, all those things.
A legacy, if you will.
Yes, I mean, right. Everything happens for a reason. I was meant to be the dad of girls, and but what we did was we transferred, which is the verb for like putting the embryos inside the surrogate uterus. We transferred my strongest male embryo and Toby's strongest female embryo, and only the girl took. So as soon as we knew that we were having a girl, we knew it was Toby's.
I see. And what happened? I mean, this might be too in the weeds, and I can always Google it, but like what happens to the embryo that doesn't quote unquote take? Like your strongest male embryo didn't take, it just gets like flushed out?
Yes.
Okay.
And then our oldest was born, and that was incredible, and she's perfect. And then
she's an aspiring author, as you've heard on previous podcasts.
And then when we were ready, we wanted. Now I should just take a step back, and I'm not sure, we've never discussed this, but I am personally a firm believer that everything happens for a reason.
I'm on board with that. Okay. Yeah.
And we really wanted our kids to be just about 2 years apart. Toby and his sister are 2 years, 2 months apart, and her kids are 2 years, 2 months apart. And so that seemed perfect for us. My sister and I are 5 years apart, which is too much. So, in our opinion. And so we tried, and we ended up changing our surrogacy agency, changing our lawyer. We did not have a good experience with that lawyer who connected all the dots the first time, ended up not being great for us. And then the surrogacy agency the second time around, we just didn't feel like a priority. They were just like really dragging their feet, but just even in terms of just email responsiveness, which, you know, as somebody in a service job, like I can't tolerate lack of responsiveness in emails. So we changed to an agency that was actually built and designed by and for gay men. And once we did that, it moved much quicker, but the whole process was delayed. And so we ended up starting later than we wanted to, and our kids ended up being just over 3 years apart, which now I believe is the perfect age difference. But for the second one, we transferred only a single embryo and only one of mine, because we already had a child of Toby's, and we transferred a boy, and my second highest rated boy, and it did not take.
These are the embryos that you had created initially.
Yes.
And you can just freeze them.
Yes. So that's the thing too. Our two daughters could have been twins. The embryos were created at the exact same time. We could have decided to transfer the younger one's embryo at the same time that we did our older ones. And the likelihood is they both would have been born and been twins. And so we joke that we wait for her to figure that out, that she was on ice for 3 years, and she could have been the same age as her older sister. But anyway, we transferred my second strongest male embryo. It did not take. So then we tried again with my strongest female embryo, and it did take. And so that's our second daughter.
And this is, so the surrogate for your second daughter is a different person?
Yes. Okay. So the surrogate was a different person. Our first surrogate, the surrogate for our older daughter, our daughter was her, I want to say, 6th pregnancy.
Wow.
She had 3 kids of her own, and this was her 3rd time doing it as a surrogate. And so this was time to close up shop.
Yeah.
A doctor wouldn't approve her for another one.
But the eggs were from the same woman. The eggs were from the same woman.
So the egg donor and the surrogate were always totally different people.
Oh, right. But what I mean is for your first daughter and your second daughter, the eggs were the same.
Yes. So they share the same maternal genetics. Yes.
Got it. Okay. Here's the big question that may make you uncomfortable.
Okay.
We all know that this shit is pricey.
Yeah.
If you had to put a price tag on it,
yes,
can you? And don't give me like, oh, but fatherhood is priceless.
No, I mean, each process was, I would say, between $150,000 to $175,000. But this was also, my oldest one is going to turn 9 this year, and my younger one's going to turn 6 this year. So I don't know what the prices are now. I can only assume they are much more.
More, sure.
But I don't know that.
I mean, is there financing? Like,
Yes.
can you get a surrogacy loan?
You can.
Interesting. Okay.
There's all kinds of, there's an entire industry around it.
I'm sure.
I was very fortunate in that between, this was something we had planned for and had saved for. And I also, was able to get some family help for it. So we didn't do that. But yes, there are all kinds of financial programs to assist with this. There's also different places you can do this. You can do this out of the country in much more affordable places. There's, of course, probably all kinds of thinking around that on both sides, and I'm not really familiar with it all. The financial part of it all is like super interesting because at the beginning of the surrogacy, you have to put a certain amount in an escrow account, and the surrogates are paid out of that escrow account so that they're not pregnant with a kid and then you just like disappear without their money.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a fascinating process, and you learn something new every single day that you are pregnant in a surrogacy. And maybe that's true of any pregnancy, but there are so many people involved in your pregnancy between the fertility clinic, the surrogate, the surrogacy agency, that and so many of these people have done this before, or they do it every day. It's just so they don't necessarily, they've kind of lost some of the sensitivity to how frightening so much of this is for you, how nerve-wracking so much of this is for you, and can maybe forget to give you some information because, for them it's just, a matter of course of the day. But it's really bizarre having so many people involved in your pregnancy and having control of information and control of different situations. And then you have this surrogate, of course, who like you is the most important person to you for, 40 plus weeks. And you only want the best for them. But of course they have their own needs and personalities and families and relationships and situations. It's a very complex situation. I think in both of our cases, they went as well as anybody's could ever have. We're very blessed. But there's nothing like the feeling of leaving the hospital with your baby and all of a sudden it's just you and your baby and there's nobody else involved.
And I guess this is probably case by case, but in your, I guess 2 questions as we wrap up, are the surrogates still a part of your lives?
They are not. And, which is really interesting. The first surrogate, was not necessarily a personality match. We liked her a lot, but this was not somebody we were going to have a long-standing relationship with. And for a while, we would email or text, on our older one's birthday and, send pictures, and then she would send pictures back of her family. But even that has fallen off. And then our second surrogate felt like somebody who was going to be in our lives forever. Like it was just a much closer relationship. We just felt more in tune with her and her family. And to the point that we were even concerned that like, our older one's going to be jealous that we have this relationship with the younger one surrogate. And then we don't know what happened. She ghosted us after the pregnancy. There were a few months of being in contact. And then she and her husband, with whom we'd had a very close relationship the entire time, just stopped responding. And then I would make an effort every year on the birthday. And I think one year, a couple years later, we were shocked to get a response. And then it built back up briefly. And then they disappeared again. And from what we can tell from the little social media contact we have with them, They have moved states and are on the complete opposite side of the political spectrum from us. So
I see. Yeah. I mean, and also people just get busy. And like you said, like for so many people involved, it is a job.
yes, absolutely, yes. And both of our surrogates had 3 kids of their own. Um, but there's also it's a very strange and intimate and emotional process, and so who knows what feelings were brought up. We have no idea. We have no idea if there was like some kind of postpartum depression issue that she just couldn't interact with us anymore. We have no idea.
For your daughters who each have technically different dads.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen your family interact. And
Yeah.
to me, it's like a very complete, cohesive,
Yeah.
like really beautiful
Thank you.
unit of love. Is there ever like, you're not my dad, we're not sisters?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. But I mean, they're 5 and 8, and so they still idolize us and love us so much. The one time we got close to that was when our older one was pretty young, and she was so mad at me that she said, "I'm not Jewish anymore." And I was just really proud of her because I thought that like denouncing your Judaism it means that I've done such a good job of raising her as a Jew, because that's like such a Jewish thing to do.
Yeah.
But our older one is very aware of and almost obsessed with the idea of like blood relation, and that she's blood related to Toby, and that she's blood related to her sister, but not to me, but that I'm still her papa. And she and I have an incredibly close relationship. I'm actually going through a moment of worrying that my kids feel a little too attached, but that's a whole other topic.
You have time to cut that cord.
Yeah. No, I mean, we're a very cohesive, close family. And, Toby and I had talked a lot at one point about how we were going to tell them about the genetics. And then at one point, our older one, we were at Sesame Place and just asked, I forget how she phrased it, because I wasn't there. I was on the merry-go-round or the carousel with the younger one, and they were off, and he came and said, "Oh, she just asked." And I forget how she phrased it, but it was clear that she understood that it could only be one of us. And we said, let's just answer the question, because like the younger you do it, the more it's just going to be matter of fact, and she's just going to grow up with this understanding, and it's not going to be this like revelation at like
Secret.
13 that like, what? I'm not related to you, And so we've even talked about it with the younger one. I don't know how much she fully grasps it, but yeah, I mean it's open and everybody knows, and I think they both know that we are both their dads, and that we both love them unconditionally, to infinity is beyond, as we say in this family, and that also both of our words are gospel. If they can get in trouble from either one of us.
For now.
Yeah, right.
For now. Well, I really appreciate your being so open about this.
Yeah.
I've always been curious. It wasn't the question I want to lead with, like, how do you get kids?
Oh, yeah, no, we're always happy to be open books about it. And if anybody listening has any more questions, feel free to DM, and I'm happy to set up a call. Toby and I have gotten on many a Zoom to people that have been referred to us by our surrogacy agency to talk them through the process, because it is a lot, but it's also wonderful, and the result is amazing. And then once you're through it, you kind of like what I've heard about natural birth, like you block it out of your mind so you can do it again.
I think that's a beautiful way of being of service. That's very, very cool that the agency kind of has you on speed dial.
Yeah.
Like, talk to Brian and Toby. They'll give you the skinny.
Yeah.
Shall we take a break?
Yeah.
Fabulous. See you in a moment.
So, Judson, I think you came back from your weekend with a Go Ask Your Dad question?
I have a Go Ask Your Dad question.
Okay.
Reminder to our listeners, this is our advice segment. We are not... We're not trained mental health practitioners. This is just advice based on our combined 112 years of being on this earth as gay people. So the question is, I have an 8-year-old daughter from my previous 2 marriage to a man. We are now divorced. I do have a new boyfriend, and she gets very upset when we are physically affectionate. What do I do?
So that's funny because it reminds me of this past weekend when Toby and I went away to London. Our older one just piled on the guilt. And, there's a number of answers here, but I just said to her, like, you want your dad to be happy. Like, this is good for you. You want happy dads. And, you should be happy that your dads love each other enough that they want to celebrate being married for 10 years and that we're going to do this together. And dads need our time. And so similarly, I think, and listen, my older daughter is also 8, so I know that you can have this level of conversation with an 8-year-old. I think you need to say that, like, listen, I have all the love in the world for you. My love for you is not diminished by being with somebody else. As you learn as a parent, your heart grows in size with everybody you bring into your life. And I think he can explain that. But also that, like, we'd also tell our kids, like, once they are in bed, it is grown-up time. And, like, Toby and I need our grown-up time. And it is not for you. You are not allowed to come down for that. And it is important for us to have that time. And so I think you need to have a frank discussion with your daughter and say, like, listen, I love you, but I also need to be a grown-up. I need to have my own time, my own relationships. And any time that he is showing love to me or I'm showing love to him, you should be happy that your father is happy, because a happy father makes for a much more happy kid, I promise you. And, we also pride ourselves on how we balance our parent life with our gay adult lives. And, I think that we're pretty good at being able to, like, live as fun gay men who do fun gay male things, without always bringing it back to the playground and parenting and, what we're experiencing with school or the piano teacher or summer camp, and, right? I mean, I think when we hang out, you don't walk away rolling your eyes about how much parenting I bring to the.
I'm always interested. I mean, also because I'm getting to know you better and have come to love you very deeply. I'm always curious, like, how your kids are.
Sure.
Like, hey, how are the kids? I'm always going to ask about how people's families are, but, like, there's just parts of parenting that are probably not going to capture my attention.
Right.
And I think you recognize that in a circle, like our circle of friends, you're the parents.
Right.
Right. So we talk about the gay shit, and then the parent stuff is just like kind of whatever.
Right. And so I think that, I think it's important for a kid to understand that while they are on one level everything, they are also on another level not everything. And that a grown adult has to have a grown adult life too, and that they should have their own lives too. Our 8-year-old has a very robust social life, and it boggles my mind when I see her with her friends and everything they're talking about and gossip, and it's crazy to me that this whole social life has developed without me. But it also makes me very proud, and I think that you can point that out to your daughter and say, like, listen, like, the way that you have your own life that you don't want me involved with, like, there are parts that every person needs that. Every person needs their own life, and that this new man in my life is part of that. And if he is showing me affection, that is only a good thing. It does not take away from the affection that I feel for you or that I show you, the time that I spend with you. And I mean, as long as that's true, I also do think that I've seen friends, parent friends, single parent friends who, when they get into a relationship, it does become more challenging to balance. I want to pour all this time into my new relationship. I want this person I'm dating to know that, like, I am more than just a parent. But at the same time, you have a young child who does have a significant amount of needs. And a lot of that need is just time with you and love and affection. So as long as that's not being compromised, then I think it's okay to say, like, listen, I give you everything you need and more, and I love you to the moon and back, and we have our time together, and I will always give you all the hugs and kisses you need. But I also need hugs and kisses from him, and I need that to not bother you.
Gorgeous answer.
I hope so.
Really, really, really great. And
Okay.
it's, I mean, it sort of follows the through line of like open, honest, and direct
Yeah.
with other gay men,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You can also bring that to parenting, right? Kids are fucking smart.
They are smart. And yes, being open, honest, and direct is the key. It really is. I think we are that way as much as we possibly can be. I mean, like we've talked about, do my kids know that I'm in an open marriage? No. Will I address that when the timing is right and in the right context? Of course. And, there are times that things come up. I accidentally, in front of my daughter the other day, made a comment about somebody in her life being in the closet. And she said, "What does that mean?" And I said, "Oh, it's an adult conversation."
Oh my God. Your friend Mandy's dad.
No, it wasn't one of their friends, but somebody that they know. Anyway, listen, there's moments where you have to, like, understand what's appropriate. But I do think, yes, open, honest, direct is really key, especially with a smart 8-year-old.
Thanks for chatting this week, Brian.
Oh my God, I love this so much. Every week.
Me too. I'm looking forward to doing this again with you next week.
Yep. All right. If you do have a Go Ask Your Dad question, please DM us on Instagram at Dads and Daddies Pod. If you check out our website, dadsanddaddies.com, there's ways for you to submit a question there too. And please subscribe if you haven't already. Please leave us a review, rate us, provide us all the feedback. It's all very helpful. And we will see you guys all in a week.
See you in a week.